We've been here for an hour.
2, 1, Carlos.
Whenever you're ready.
At least
welcome to the Towercast podcast. The Tower.
Keep it going.
Let's see. Keep it going, Delo.
So this week on the WatchTower podcast, which I'm introing because it's my show, I own it legally. There's papers somewhere, I swear. We are talking about a curated pick from a one fantastic hombre. Yes, I mean myself. No one else chose this film. This is my film. I chose the best film because I picked the best films.
Why do you think you pick the best films, Delo? Can I? I gotta have.
I mean, it's the hat. That's all you need to know.
It's like Harry Potter and the choosing.
Yeah, I actually put on a beanie and then it's like, what film will it be today? You know? Yeah.
Do you want to introduce the room before we continue?
Yes, to introduce this room on this fine day, because apparently I'm hosting the show now. We have none other than our humble assistant, Carlos M. De La Torre. Please wave.
I'm nothing but a PA in this. Hello. Can I get you some coffee?
You didn't wave, so you can get me nothing. Okay, we have the actor's perspective, the John, the Eric, and or Castro.
Maybe God made me a painter for people that haven't been born yet.
You know what? Wrong year, but I'm going to give you the Oscar anyway. We have our residential poster artist, painter, man, Yoko Christian Medina.
Hey.
I don't know. Wait, that was out of order. But there we go.
I was just waiting for you to go. I was just going to go.
That is okay. That is okay. And last, we have Austin Young, producer, editor, and colored personality. That was probably not the right thing.
Personality.
Colored commentator of the evening.
Word. We're getting
Austin Young.
Definitely hit the medium.
Hey, guys, blink twice if you need help.
I've been blinking my ass off for this whole time.
Welcome back to the to this podcast where we're not going to...
Really bad.
That is why I'm hosting today, because
that's exactly why he's hosting. Welcome back to the WatchTower podcast. Beautiful intro by Delao. He introduced everybody.
Clap, everybody.
Everybody's gonna give him a clap. He's gonna be hosting from now on because I'm out of here. I can't compete with that.
Now on.
Thank you guys for joining. He did the intros. You know who's in here in the room. He picked the film today.
Because it's the best film.
What type of film it's gonna be?
The Dafoe episode.
Castro already gave a reaction to.
You're the kind of people that want Spider-Man dead. I know your type.
I love Spider-Man, man.
Not a hint towards later on, wink, audience.
We're doing Julian Schnabel. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. 2018 biographical drama At Eternity's Gate. Oscar contender for Best Actor. In 2018. This was an interesting choice.
Yeah.
We're gonna get
better
into
choice of words on that one. Better choice of words than the Lowe's. Interesting.
I'm gonna want to hear the Lao's perspective because he's quoted saying that this was like one of his favorite things that he's seen.
It has to be like at least top 3, if
top
not
3. Wow. Of all time.
Yeah,
is it the performance wise or the script?
Okay, so if you want. Okay, so I can go.
Why did you pick that? Why did you pick this film?
Do you want me to go to my spiel? I guess I don't know if we want to go around the room. Let's get everybody's perspectives, and then we can round it back to me because I'm gonna go into like.
Let's start with you. Let's start with you. Set it up for us. Okay. Why did you pick this film?
I was a boy once, and as a boy, I had many dreams.
Right.
Shut up, Carlos, I swear to God. Anyway, as a boy, I had dreams, ambitions, insert words here. I had all of those. And I think as my current dream, if we want to get to the matter, and I guess...
Guys, we forgot to turn off the funny switch.
Are we still doing the intros?
I'm going to have fun with the episode.
Are we still doing this?
Yeah. Go for it.
No. Okay, so
my birthday, Delo.
It's my birthday now. Okay,
but it's your podcast.
It's my podcast. No. Okay. So as a lover of cinematography and as somebody who feels that cinematography plays just this role in creating a film and what I hope to do. I think this film really shows the potential for the camera work to tell more of the story than I think acting, scripting, and all that can really do. There was some level of weight that really just the camera work, the color direction, all the practicals that were implemented while making the film, it added this extra layer that I haven't seen in a whole lot of other films. I mean, before this, it was like Her. I felt like Her did exactly that when describing love, when describing internal conflict, when describing his loneliness. Like that's the cinematography told you all those things. Nobody else had to. And with this film, it's talking about somebody who, is kind of getting lost in the madness inside their own head and trying to find and make sense of the world and still trying to find beauty. And that's exactly what the cinematography did for this film. And the story I thought was beautiful. I thought the performances were amazing. I think they really sold all the feelings that Van Gogh had and everything that they were trying to go for as far as humanizing the character that we kind of talked about. So yeah, it's up there for me because it does something that not a lot of films, I think a lot of films struggle to be able to do successfully, which is tell a lot more of the story through the camera work than through anything else,
Gotcha. And we're going to get into that because we did discuss that. Yokomoto, what were your first impressions of this picture?
So I myself, sorry, I'm a die here for the art.
It made him emotional, this picture.
Yeah.
Yes.
I cried before and after.
Before.
I remember hearing this movie when it got nominated, and it was one of those movies that I'm like, you know what, I want to see. I'm curious about it.
Right.
And then so I saw it. I think I will say I do love the cinematography in this. It's beautiful, especially there's these moments where it captures the scenery and even the people. Kind of like the same color choices as the palette of a Van Gogh painting. I was noticing like, oh, this is pretty cool.
The color is
it tells us. No, we'll get into that. We'll get into that right now. But you're absolutely right.
But I'd say my only drawback that I think I had with this film was that I think I saw it too close to another French film, Climax by Gaspar Noé.
Okay.
Now, I know the very tonally different, right? But the thing is that the other one was the Climax is way too pretentious. I mean, it has cool ideas, but it gets some really weird segments. Really? And then I see this one, and I'm like, oh my god, this is too French out of nowhere. There's these moments I'm like, oh, it gets too Frenchy, and I just think like if I hadn't seen the other movie before this one, I think I would have been a bit more level on that side. But other than that, like I do like his Willem Dafoe's performance.
Oh yeah,
and the way they interpret his insanity.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Castro, what was your perspective? You're going to have, I think, a different perspective as a viewer, right? So what was your
it's because me, I hate...
By the way, you're given full permission to, like, bash this film into the ground. Like, I mean...
No. I like the film. This is why I wanted to ask Carlos. Is this a character-driven or It's character-driven, right?
It's intended to be character-driven, but I think it started getting lost in some of the... And then that's what I'm going to kind of give as my perspective.
Yeah, okay.
To get lost in some of the storytelling techniques that we start not worrying about the characters much, but it is a character piece by all definitions. It is a character piece.
The more that I start seeing William Dafoe's films, I'm starting to understand and appreciate that he can't do any wrong. Right. And this is one of those films where I don't think the script is good. I think everything was relied on him, like even those long shots on him, those close-ups. He's a perfect actor for that.
Yeah.
Where it kind of threw me off was the shaky camera. Obviously, I understand that.
It's an artistic choice,
Yeah, you're trying to get this perspective that he has an unstable life and all that, for sure. But I think it was just overdone. Like, way too much. That it was kind of like getting me a headache. It was just way too shaky. It was
just jarring for you instead of it fulfilling some purpose.
And even some of the edits felt like it wasn't unfinished. It felt like they were... I don't know if this is what they were trying to do. It felt like they were just letting Dafoe make the magic. Where it's like, no, but you're the director. It's like it was
so
just
they
too much on
depended too much on
him.
the performance. Than
Yeah,
wow,
which
that's
he
interesting.
nailed it for sure.
That's
but it
how
was
you
just
read it.
yeah.
Like they
it
should
was-
have spent more time on the rest of the stuff, not just the performance. That's interesting.
Yeah,
That's
I mean, I loved his performance for sure. It was just one of those that I saw that. Okay, I really don't care about the script because I kind of know his life.
I think
different
we're going to be able to
perspective.
enlighten each other here because I think each of us have a different perspective on where we're coming from with that.
Mhm.
So
For sure.
okay.
Yeah.
Austin, do you have anything on your end? Like anything you saw that either impressed you or didn't impress you?
Maybe even also the editing. I know you were
Yeah.
bringing that up, Gaster, but
Oh, that's true.
Um,
What you think?
no, nothing that really stood out to me. I think more than anything, the cinematography in this film is what stood out more than anything.
What did you think of the picture though? Did you like it or did you not like? Or are you kind of just neutral about it?
Were you into the script or?
Yeah, I think more neutral. It was good, but nothing that necessarily blew me away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, I think I was telling you guys, it definitely brought a perspective on a person that we always
heard about.
think is a genius or
I
like,
idolize,
you know,
right?
about
I mean, not idolize, but at least make
yeah,
an
like
icon out
somewhat
of it.
idolized an icon.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you don't realize that in those times he wasn't considered that.
Right. Yeah, no, he
So-
was definitely one of those artists, and we do learn about that through this. Like, people didn't really start recognizing his work fully until 100
Until
years
his
after
death.
he died. You know,
Yeah.
So
And that's
after
the
his death.
perfect with that perfect line that I said, dude. That line got me. Like
Which
made me a painter for people that
Just
weren't
for
even
the-
born yet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That
Holy
was just
shit, dude, that
terrific
makes you
line.
think, like-
I agree with you.
It's one of those
Um,
where, man, a lot
Well,
of us
look,
think
this
that.
these are my perspective. I've told you guys the way I approach cinema is like know what came before it so that you can understand why directors and writers make certain choices, right? So I feel like, to your point, Yoko, this was a very French film on purpose. I think when you start studying or when you've studied like films like anything that's like Jean-Luc Godard, like anything French New Wave, you understand that the French New Wave set up French cinema the way 1960s and 1970s set up cinema for Americans and filmmakers. So like our favorite filmmakers idolize the film brats from the 70s, right? In French cinema, they honor the Godards and the Razanis and the Vardas and the Demis, like the Truffaut, like they honor those guys. So this is definitely a reflection of that. If you've seen enough French New Wave, if you haven't seen, start with Godard. Start with Jean-Luc Godard. He does a lot more streamlined stories, but he does it in that French New Wave style. French New Wave style is meant to look like a documentary more than anything. The camera work, some of the approaches to the storytelling, some of the wonder aspects, some of the raw, gritty acting. It's supposed to look like a documentary. And I'm not trying to belittle it. There's so much more to French New Wave, but for us, like kind of like as a general audience viewer of that type of cinema, you have to understand that so that you can understand why they're doing what they're doing, right? So at least me. So I agree with you, Yoko. It took this interesting approach. One thing I was reading that was interesting was that the script, the story of the film was developed as a French film, and its authenticity to be a French film because Van Gogh is a Dutch painter. I mean, Van Gogh barely even spoke French. So I like that they did what they did in this film for those reasons, because once they casted some of the main cast, they weren't fluent in French at all. So they thought, well, let's make most of the dialogue in English. We're going to start the film out in French so that it sets the tone, so that it sets the picture. And then we're going to take most of it in English. And whenever we get French moments, it's to jar the audience the way Van Gogh is jarred, because he didn't speak a lot of French. One of the key examples is when we see the scene with the students where he's painting the tree roots. And like all the students are attacking him and they're all speaking French to him. And he feels like, whoa, because the character Van Gogh, just like the real Van Gogh, he never spoke a lot of French. He spent a lot of time in the French countrysides painting, but he was like a stranger to that land. So those choices were smart to me. Those choices were like, okay, that's pretty cool. I like that. I like what you were trying to do. But primarily, the approach to make a muddled composition of the framing was probably the best thing this thing had going for it. And then right under that is the performance for me.
Wow.
Because the composition, yes, guys, a lot of the camera work it's again,
jarring.
French New Wave, it's jarring. But most of it it's on purpose to paint a picture the way Van Gogh would, and that's what I noticed from it.
Oh,
it's
I like that.
He would, if Van Gogh was directing this picture, he would have done this to find the right framing. And in most of the scenes, you see the camera move until it finally lands on that final spot. And it's almost like if Van Gogh was painting on the canvas, he's painting the picture he's trying to paint. And then he finally finds it. And he's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do.
And you think that's what they were going for?
I could definitely see that.
I don't know if they were. I haven't
moments.
read any confirmation on that. That's my theory. One of the key scenes that stood out for me in that regard is the hospital scene with his brother. Mm-hmm. So when they lay on the bed together and he kind of embraces his brother, the camera starts on a wide out here when the brother walks in, it kind of pans down here. We stay on a wide, we're kind of moving, shifting up, down, left, forward. Mm-hmm. And then we kind of push in and we're on the right side, we're on the left side. And finally, when he embraces his brother, we stay on the final shot. And that final shot is more lengthy than the movement. So to me, that's like we're finding the image to almost like a photograph, like you're finding the position of how you're going to photograph this thing best.
Okay, so see, that makes sense more when he started trying the boots.
Yeah,
I didn't understand why he was like way too weird.
Yeah, and then in addition to the whole idea of like trying to find the frame, it's also that communication of like how off center this guy is. I mean, this like you're seeing that. You know that he's a painter. And this is where he paints. He goes into a drafty, cold, hard, lonely room. Yeah. And it's like he just can't get comfortable. And the camera is the same way. It just can't get comfortable. It's like bobbing around. It's trying to find its footing. It's trying to find its center. It's, it like when it focuses on him, it's too close and it's almost uncomfortable. It's like it's jarring. And it's like you said, it was too much, but it was meant to be saturated in that,
And Castro, you're right on the nose that I understand where you're coming from because, quite frankly, and Dalal, correct me if I'm wrong here, cinematographers have become lazy. And they use those camera techniques because they think it's going to fit. Oh, this guy's, he's having a hard time. We need shaky cam here. And with no real substance to have shaky cam in a particular scene or no real substance to have a wonder in the scene.
Look at like a J.J. Abrams, like the what is it called? Like the Star Trek, where everything's all in this shaky cam, but it doesn't. It could have been done smoothly, and nobody would have batted an eye.
Lost anything in the.
It wouldn't have lost. It wouldn't have gained. It just feels cooler, I guess.
So I know where you're coming from, Castro. Like because now our brains are programmed to like when we see stuff like that, it's like they're doing this again. It's like the 100th time they use the Armageddon shaky cam thing or whatever,
Yeah. I just feel like they were overdoing it in some of them. Like I understood what they were doing it once the film went on, but I just think I'm trying to find the scene where he's talking to Isaac in the street.
Yeah.
It keeps going back and forth to him. Like I'm trying to understand. Like there's certain scenes where
that was one of my favorite scenes when they kind of come out and they're having a cigarette and that was one of my favorite scenes. In terms of the conversation and kind of where
I feel like
even the camera positioning. Let me just throw this out there. The camera positioning was when we get to Isaac's character, Paul something, right? When we get to his character, the camera's positioned below him.
Yeah.
So that puts him as the main kind of almost hero for Van Gogh. That puts him in the center of like Van Gogh's at his feet, listening to every word he's saying.
Yeah.
And convinces him to kind of move with him and kind of explore other areas to paint and other. So that's like almost like if we look at a religious aspect of it, that's like the disciples at Jesus's feet. So the camera positioning there is perfect for what it's going for. So there's a lot to it. There's a lot to it, I think. What were you going to say, Yoko?
Like in the camera wise, like I do get what Castro you're saying because there were moments where at least like the movements were a bit too drastic, not just shaky. They were like too drastic.
You would feel like
the moments where it didn't seem like it was there, like it should have been there, and it kind of like disoriented a bit. But like I do get what you're saying, but at the same time, like I do like how a lot of it was formed, especially with the way that Michael de la O and Carlos mentioned, like the way that it's like if he was finding his spot, and then finally there, like there's the image that we want. There's a painting we want to get.
And some cinematographers may look at that as lazy. Again, de la O, correct me, or maybe I think some cinematographers may be like, man, they didn't really plan this shot out. They just kind of were going for this. But if you really like analyze the intention, and the direction. Because when I first saw that this film was nominated for like best directing, not for Oscars, but for Golden Globes and for Cannes, I was like, why? And then once I saw it, I was like, I can understand the intricacy behind it. I can understand what they were going for. Like there has to be a
I also
purpose to
understood
it.
for sure. But
There has to be
one thing for
purpose to
sure,
it.
like
There's-
all the decisions here are intentional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
Yes.
feels.
Yes. Yeah.
You
And I
can
wasn't feeling that
see.
sometimes.
You know what? You can really see the solid intention behind it in that final shot when he's dead, and it's because it's so smooth, and you realize
Right.
the whole reason it was shaky and the whole reason it was like off beat, off balance is
Yeah.
because you were going through Van Gogh's eyes. You were going through
Yeah.
his life.
Yeah.
You were seeing
Lunacy.
what he was seeing. And I mean,
and I think I pointed this out while we were watching it, Dalal. One of the intentional things that hopefully, maybe it was intentional, that I noticed in regard to that is when we're in the bar and we first see his interaction with like the lady that becomes a friend of his, that he ends up painting and like the one he paints from the side when Isaac's character's painting her. So the first shot or the first interaction we see of that, we see this beautiful portrait of a close-up in a POV shot in Van Gogh's eyes. Yeah. And I started seeing that with every person he was going to paint. We see them as a portrait. We see them as this beautiful portrait, and that's how Van Gogh saw them.
Look at those shots. If you still frame it, you can see how somebody would be inspired to like go and paint that, and the uniqueness in each character. Also with like those shots, on top of it being from his view and it being a portrait shot and trying to be very flattering, you're feeling that kind of scrutiny and that kind of judgment that Van Gogh was always running into, that basically there were people that would just come right in his face and say, why would you paint that? Why would you do this? Like that's so ugly.
That's not art. That
they could have easily framed that to be an over the shoulder shot, but they knew that wasn't going to help the audience connect. There was an intention behind it. Needs to be wide and it needs to be close. You need
them looking straight into the camera when they're delivering their lines.
Every interaction he has, it's always that super intimate tight shot where the other characters just kind of freeze into place just to create that portrait look. And then they just talk to the camera and they're like, why would you do this? Why would you do that?
And one thing that they focused on that I love is like those portraits are almost like the stillness in Van Gogh's art, because they're the most beautiful shots in the film are the portrait close-ups, right?
I'll give you that.
But when he's on the run, it's very bold to do this as a director, and maybe as a cinematographer though, I don't know. It's very bold to muddle the lower third of the frame while he's out in the wilderness. But because what did Isaac's character tell Van Gogh is like when you're out, you can't paint on one thing. It's messy. It looks like clay. It looks like clay more than like a sculpture more than it does a painting. And that was his style, and that's what kind of revolutionized painting as a whole and Van Gogh's style and that conception, right? So for them to do that in the frame, for them to do that in the camera while we're looking at these wide shots of the wilderness, was very ballsy. Ballsy.
I was also interpreting that when that part would show up, the blurred bottom
lower third.
I also interpreted it more like also like it was, especially because towards the end is when you start seeing it more. Yeah, like it's more his broken view and the way he's seeing this world, this broken view of this world.
Interesting.
But it's broken. I mean, you could interpret it as broken. You could interpret it as being in this feverish, like he would describe like a dream state, a manic dream state. You could see it as it being a disconnect from what's actually happening in reality. Because one of the other times we see that is when he's walking through the village after being shot, and you see the people and the bodies of like people where they're not exactly aligned. Like the heads are over here and the feet are over here, and then he walks by them and they kind of connect. And you can see this like disconnect that if you were to live reality that way, you're not sure what's real and you're not sure what's there.
Here's something to take into consideration is that this film was based, like they've made maybe 3 or 4 since the 50s, 3 or 4 like biographical films of Van Gogh. So
I did one.
That's right. You played Van Gogh. That's right, guys.
And everything, dude.
You played Van Gogh for a short film, and Frida Kahlo.
That's why I kind of liked it when I was seeing it. I was like, oh man, I should have seen this movie before.
Yeah, I remember that. That's true. Hey, yeah.
Go for it.
No. I was just gonna say that like they've made this interpretation a few times, but I feel like this one holds true for a couple reasons. They based this on writings of Van Gogh and like kind of writings of his life, people who lived at the time who were kind of
Either
like, knew him and-
accounts,
yeah,
letters,
accounts,
notes.
but also like his own personal letters and his own personal writings. So we get a little more of an authentic perspective of who he was and what he did, right? So I think that was authentic to kind of be into his brain a little bit. But the other thing I felt was very special about this film is that, like Austin said, it humanized him. It humanized the icon. It showed us that he was a real guy with mental health issues and lots of personal issues that, like you said earlier, Gusto, before we even logged on, you were like, man, like, they're like, now we can analyze and say, man, that guy had problems, right? Like it's kind of what they did in this film. Like we see Van Gogh, or like, if you're an artist, I'm not a painter, by the way, I'm nowhere near any of that, but you kind of they're icons of this individual, right? We see them as these big icons of art that revolutionized art. Starry Night is probably one of my favorite paintings of all time, if not my favorite. You know, The Scream is probably, again, and they're all Van Gogh. So
The Scream isn't.
Oh, that's right. But it was inspired by Van Gogh. It was inspired by that same
Yes, it was.
style. So, but Starry Night is probably my favorite thing. But anyways, it humanized him. It humanized him. And when you ask me if that's a character piece, that's probably the best thing this film has going for it. It humanized him, and it made him feel like vulnerable. It made this character so vulnerable that you feel sorry for the guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. Sure.
And that's probably one of the biggest things that has going for it. Now, in terms of the painting, I was gonna say, I feel like what this film showed me the most is that Van Gogh was probably a painter that needed a camera. You know, he needed a camera because he was trying to capture all the reason I think, or the reason that I saw he painted so fast, is because he saw literally the things called at Eternity's Gate based on one of his paintings. But the other side of it is the film opens with a line, if I'm not mistaken, of like, when I see nature, I see eternity. I see it eternal. I see that it never ends.
Yeah, that's midway through the film. Yeah.
Midway. So he expresses that, like, I need to capture all of this beauty in the short amount of time. There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much canvas that I can paint on. And I feel like he probably just needed a camera, man. Like, he just needed to capture all the beauty.
Well, one of the lines that he says is like, when Isaac asks him, why do you always have to paint something from nature? He's like, I feel lost when I don't have something to look at. So that kind of makes sense for sure.
Yeah. And I think he said something like nature is the beauty of the world that still exists, or something. Like, we're all kind of connected to nature. And this was him, man.
Yeah, it just, I mean, like, I think that's where you see Dafoe really kind of like his performance stand out, and just the way he delivered the lines. And I mean, you know, with the assistant of like the directing and all that, understanding the script to a way that, I mean, like you said, maybe it didn't have enough variety or flair to it, like we see with other films, and we're kind of spoiled to. But the little lines that he would deliver in those black screens, or when you saw him talking to people, they hit so much harder.
And I thought that was an interesting choice too, by the way, the black screens and the voiceover. But it gives you, it opens up like a perspective for you to be inside his brain, his inner monologue, if you will.
Just a little extra note. Whenever that was happening, that like black screen and then the monologue, like, it would drive me crazy because my TV, like, usually like it, like the bulb just reacts and it would just like black out, right? It would happen constantly sometimes in a certain movie, and then whenever that thing would happen, like, I would just hope that a subtitle would come on, because then I would say like, okay, no, the screen is fine.
Right, yeah.
But yeah,
no, I think there was interesting choices. I will say this. I'm gonna throw this out there, and you guys will probably see a little more of what I'm about to say in the next film we're doing, which I'll announce at the end of the podcast. I feel like this film is a bit out of place, out of time, I should say. Some films we see, like old films, and we're like, oh, they're ahead of their time. They were ahead of their time. This film was probably, we would have been analyzing a film like this now if this film was released in 1960.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's wrong with it. People don't know where to place it because it's kind of genius in its approach, in a lot of ways, like we've talked about, but it's a little out of place. Let me put it to you this way. French cinema has evolved to this really cool stylistic place where when we see these French New Wave inspired films, it feels like old. It feels like an old style. Putting an example is like Call Me by Your Name. You know, French director, set in Italy, right? But it's got these stylistic French new cinema styles to it.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, what you're talking about in reference is a time when what they were doing is pushing the medium forward, and they were trying to push the art form forward. They were doing things that, of course, no one else was doing, and in no way does it look as polished as everything else that comes out.
Right.
But it's trying to do something else with the medium, because there's still potential when it comes to like what can be done with,
and it's not
camera
not
movements.
like I'm not trying to make it sound like they're being lazy or they're they're reverting or recycling old systems.
Yeah, but if you look at like what won for like best cinematography that year, if I'm not mistaken, it was Roma, right? Like Roma, I think like took the cake, and something like Roma.
What was that year?
It's a matter of they didn't push the medium forward, in my opinion, but they showed how we've come to a level of perfection that when we apply steady cam, long takes, the black and white, and understanding the lighting and dynamics of cinematography, for that we've perfected it to the point that making Roma like it's beautiful. It's a beautiful
this
film.
One sadly,
sadly,
this wasn't nominated for best cinematography for the Academy Awards.
Bigots.
But I understand something like why Roma won. Because it was something that this film did effectively, but way more effectively while still pushing the medium. Like Roma, what they did was literally Cuarón was trying to capture a moment in time. He was trying to capture a moment in time, like if he was looking at an old photograph of Mexico, you know? Yeah. So he did that so effectively, and more than anything, he did the cinematography on his own. Like
because I feel like with Roma, it's like a level of like perfection, you know? It's a refined. It's something that if Roma was made earlier on or with a different crew, we would have seen what they were going for, but we would have felt like you're not there yet, you know? But I mean, what Cuarón did, I mean, it's refined. And with this one, it doesn't feel refined, but you can see so much intention and character.
No, I agree.
That I think, to me, that's what stands out and why I admire this film, because I mean, a lot of my tastes, I feel like they try to push either the medium forward, or they're trying to do things that are experimenting and adding something else to the conversation than just what's normally there, you know? Right. This one, it's adding more to the conversation that I think wasn't there before when it comes to talking about the potential in editing and in camera.
I will say that this film, for me, I mean, we have a podcast, so I'm a little biased, and this podcast kind of generally revolves around us just sitting around talking about movies, right? But I feel like this film was created for the art house junkies, you know, and for the art house nuts who like want to see something that they can discuss for years on end, you know? I've been trying to say that, like I've had my in-laws, one of my nephews, he's studying DMP, he's studying filmmaking, right? And he's always like with his family, like trying to convince him, like, no, certain movies are great and certain movies should be talked about. One of them that always comes up is Midsommar, right? And his mom always asks me, like, why do people make these types of movies? What's the point of this? But not like in a malicious way, just like in a way of like trying to understand.
I don't understand.
Yeah, and I tell her it's because the filmmaker's intention is to do two things. And if you don't do these two things as a filmmaker, you're probably not telling stories effectively. This is my opinion. The two things are make somebody feel something, period. If whatever your intention is, that's up to you. If it's fear, if it's love, if it's drama, whatever, right? That's the number one thing. Make somebody feel something. The other one is make something that people are going to want to talk about for years after your films have been released. And that just means open up a conversation. That means be the foundation so that people can converse about whatever story you're trying to tell. And I think, again, that's what Midsommar was trying to do. Whether it's disturbing, whether it's rough to watch, whether it's not an easy watch, it's going to make you talk about it for years after it's out, right? And I think that At Eternity's Gate has that influence on art house nuts, on artists in general, on painters, on people who are in the arts, to kind of sit around and say, man, that's interesting that like Van Gogh as a human being was a broken artist, right? Was a troubled artist. And that sets up, even for musicians nowadays, that's kind of their bread and butter, man, is to be people who have gone through some shit and then they write about it. That's what a painter is, right? So I think that's what the intention of this film was. I think it successfully executed that. At least for me, I didn't think, like, I'll be honest, Alao, when we first finished it, I was like, I thought it was going to be better for my standards, of like what I like, right?
Yeah.
Again, being subjective, but it made me think for days after, and it made me analyze like, oh, well, those choices were for this, those choices were for that. So
Part of it.
I think it successfully did what it was trying to do, man. I very much enjoyed thinking about it afterwards.
Yeah. I think a lot of the pictures I enjoy diving into, like even like the art house kind of like obscure stuff. It's the fact that it's that thought that just lingers, and it's kind of jarring to the point of like it stays with you. And this one, I mean, since the first time I saw it, it stayed with me, and it's something that I knew that, like, I remember before this, I was gonna pick something for like us to talk about, and you know, I was thinking like, oh, I could throw this movie around, or I could throw that movie around. But the second this one kind of came into focus, it was like I have to move everything aside because I need to finally talk about this. I need to finally like, you know, just let myself have a conversation with people who are like, why did that happen? Like, why was it shot this way? Why was it that way?
It's sometimes funner, isn't it? Like I like movies that can make me go one way or the other, where they can make me want to learn how this film was made in deeper context, or to talk about the subject matter so much that I don't care about how they made it. And this was one of those, like, it made me think about not necessarily the story, but it made me think about the character and how they were trying to tell the story of this character. And I didn't have to obsess about how they made it a little deeper. Yeah,
because like we were looking at like the previous films we've done, like we looked at oh man, what was it called? Guy in the Car. Damn.
Lock.
When we talk about like Lock, or we talk about like even Cinema Paradiso, there's there's very little question. Rock and Rolla. There's very little question about like what's happening at the end. You know, it's very much like, damn, like that was well put together. Like they knew what they were doing. They got the right crew, got the right story, right actors. Yeah. They put it all together, and it's just a really awesome, you know, piece of cinema that you come back to, and it's perfectly encapsulated. And that's kind of where it sits. And you almost revisit that to gain inspiration and look at it. But this one, it's something that just kind of simmers. It doesn't hold.
Let me ask you guys. In regard to your point, Dafoe, in regard to your point, do you guys prefer a film that ties it up with a pretty little bow in the most successful way, so that you can say, oh man, that was great, and I need to leave it there, and that's fine, I'll revisit it in a few years, or something like this, which kind of leaves those ends open for you to think about? You know?
What
do you guys prefer? What do you guys prefer?
I don't think this one left it open. Like, I think it's the
not so much the story. I mean, the story.
Yeah, not the story. Like, because obviously it's about a guy who died, and we know what his legacy went on to be.
Yeah.
But like
the elements that made it together.
Yeah, like what I mean by leave it open is like it leaves it open for interpretation on your view of Vincent van Gogh. You know, because if your view of Vincent van Gogh was the amazing artist who, I don't know about you guys, but I always felt like he was like somebody like Ernest Hemingway, like Ernest Hemingway, like they were all in that. I love that era of history and art where people are just sitting around in bars talking about art and talking about
the Midnight in Paris situation.
Yeah, the Midnight in Paris people, exactly. I always envisioned Vincent van Gogh as part of that camp. He sat around with a bunch of other artists and smoked cigarettes and just chilled and drank coffee and talked about art, but he wasn't. This opened my perspective to be like, no, he was really a broken artist. He obsessed,
and he wanted to be a part of that community you're talking about.
He wanted to, yes, he wanted to be accepted and thrown in there, but he knew he was so much of an introvert, and so much of almost like a castaway that he wasn't quite ready to be in that camp. So that's what I mean by leaving it open for interpretation. Like, oh man, I had this vision of Vincent van Gogh that this is a whole nother interpretation of it. I'm so fascinated with thinking about that vision of it. You know what I mean? I don't know. That's what I mean by opening it up. Leaving it open,
for me, like it all kind of like it all boils down on how you tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
And if then, because it could be ended in either way.
Sure.
Like it could be tied up or it could be open-ended, like in the way you feel about.
Yeah.
It just depends on how that story was told. Then I'm like, oh, okay, that I will remember.
So do you feel by showing us like his funeral, by showing us kind of with his art selling, that kind of tied the pretty little bow for you type of thing?
Yeah, I think it tied it, especially because, well, in my situation, I actually knew about a little bit about the story of Van Gogh before he died. Like, he wasn't a popular artist. Like, he was
right.
Yeah, so I kind of like already knew that. Okay, this vision of him is not going to be that popular, of him being the artist.
Right.
Which I kind of actually enjoyed that they didn't try to make him that.
Yeah.
Because in a lot of other stories, that's what they would try to do.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna be honest. Like, the only other interpretation I've never seen. They made a 1956 picture with Kirk Douglas playing Vincent Van Gogh, which I've never seen. But interesting choice, right? Kirk Douglas, like this Hollywood fucking.
Guy, William Dafoe, because I read somewhere where he's way older than.
Yeah, he's like twice his age. Like, literally, he was 37 or something when he died, Van Gogh, and you know, he's not playing that, but
sure.
But no. What I meant to say is, like, I've only seen one other interpretation of this character, the way this sets it up, and it was in Akira Kurosawa's dreams.
Two.
Well, yeah, you were actually right on the age, Justin. You were right on. No. I'm not even talking about age. I'm talking about the interpretation of being like a troubled artist that has a lot of philosophical enigmas to him. In Akira Kurosawa's dreams, there's a small scene where one of the protagonists is basically traveling through worlds, and he goes to France, and he's in the fields with Vincent Van Gogh, and Vincent Van Gogh is like telling him, like, philosophically, like, why he's painting the way he's painting, and laugh all you want, I don't care. In Akira Kurosawa's interpretation, Vincent Van Gogh is played by Martin Scorsese.
Ah, get out of here!
And
it is, folks.
It's the closest thing I've seen to what they were trying to do in this film for that character.
Yeah,
was like present him as this like troubled, nutty, almost on cocaine type of painter of just trying to feverishly paint and do, you know. Yeah. I've never seen something like that, so I thought I knew about his artistry, but I've never seen it on film. So that's what interested me about this interpretation, I think.
Well, one thing I loved about this film, as I was watching it, is that it made me truly believe that what was being painted was actually being painted. I felt exactly that, like, he was constructing that painting from the first brushstroke to the end. And that's because a lot in a lot of movies, like, you would just see like the actor or whoever plays it, like, they would just do like a little bit of it, and you're like, and then this person would have never done that thing.
It's interesting that you say that, Yoko, because from what I was reading, most of these are paintings in progress, right? We never really see the finished product until his funeral, probably, for a lot of them. What's interesting about this is that the paintings in the film were done by 3 people. Willem Dafoe himself, who was actually painting these. Mm-hmm. The director, Julian Schnabel or whatever, he was one of the guys. He's also a painter, so he had experience in that. And then the head of his art department, Edith Boderand. So they were actually painting in frame, in camera. It wasn't. For a lot of them.
And that's what I really liked about this film.
The blending of the shots.
Yes. I feel like for you, Yoko, it's like when I see a musician on stage in a film and I'm looking at the chords that guitar player is playing, I'm like, bullshit, you're not actually playing the guitar. I know you're not. I can see it. Like, you're a painter. You're not a graphic artist. So is that what you see, kind of?
At least, like, I guess, because especially
because he's going all over the place. Like, so you could go for
There's this one moment where, especially when he's explained, this whole thing is being explained of he's making clay, right? They basically painting like clay, and then there's all the colors kind of go into black and white, but you see exactly, you still see the brush strokes like he does, and you see this clay forming,
kind of like maps up how it affects. Yeah, it's that
and how you,
artist connection with the canvas. Yeah,
it's almost
like exactly what I would.
He was trying to make like a 3D painting, almost like something that pops out of the canvas a little bit. Yeah.
And at that moment, I thought it was awesome. I was like, oh shoot, that was a really beautiful part. The way to use it.
I thought it was interesting when he's in the, and I don't know which museum it is. I'm pretty sure it wasn't the Louvre. I don't know what it was, but he's in this museum with all these beautiful portraits, and he feels out of place. Like it makes me feel like he's out of place. Like he's not like, no, nothing is similar to what he's doing. Everything is so refined and so like a king commissioned an artist to make a portrait of me. That's what it felt like. And I think for me, it made me feel like, oh, dude, he doesn't belong there. Like he feels like there's nothing on the walls of this museum that represents him.
And him, like you can see, like he's like trying so hard to understand what the hell,
why this people attracted to this, right? Yeah, like it's almost like a filmmaker, right? Like you put your film in a film festival, and all these other films people are reacting to, and they get to yours, and nobody's connecting with yours. But is it because your film sucks, or is it because it's ahead of its time? Is it because
also
it's
the way
it's a style that's never been adapted, or it's a style that's never been explored? And that's what Vincent Van Gogh was going through. Like he invented this thing that people were going to idolize years after.
And I think it's something that kind of like demystifies, the idea people have behind Van Gogh. And I mean, you see all this like spoof art that gets made now that it's like a painting in a Van Gogh style and all that.
Right.
And the fact that when he was painting, it's almost like he couldn't understand how people didn't see his paintings as art, and because he felt like everything I paint, it's to finally show people what I see and what life actually looks like. Because when he was at the museum, he's like, but I don't see that. That's not what I see when I see reality. I see trees and the colors and the way that shadows bounce off, and I'm painting reality so people can finally see reality, and nobody got that. And then
I know this is gonna be the weirdest like parallel, but the way I see it is like I know this is gonna be the weirdest parallel, but I see it like Vincent Van Gogh was like the NWA of his time. Like NWA was saying, like I'm making songs about the reality I see in my world and the police and how people are treated and what's going on. I'm not making songs about the beautiful world outside of an acoustic guitar. So I feel like Vincent Van Gogh was like, I don't see your royalty in my little shack. I see the world. I see the wilderness. I see I don't see this aristocratic view that you guys have as painters who are commissioned to paint royalty. That's kind of the parallel I make, like with hip hop and how hip hop artists feel like other people don't consider them real music, but they really are. And man, I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting to see that Van Gogh was going through that at the time he was. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
Castro, I feel like okay. So to kind of dive in a little bit, there's the shaky camera work. We got it. There's the colors that are just odd and beautiful. Music that's just jarring, and it's all there. But
music was something that stood out in this too.
I thought the score did an amazing job, but okay, we'll put down God's work aside. So what do you think was impressive about Dafoe's performance here, and you think that really kind of shows why he was up for, I guess, like the Oscar nod in this case?
Yeah, it's the only Oscar nod this film got, by the way. The only Oscar nod this film got. What's up?
No, I don't think so.
Dafoe? Yeah. I think he was for one other thing, but I'll look that up while you answer.
I think he was nominated for the Florida Project.
That's right. That's right, for Best Supporting. Mm-hmm.
And was it The Last Temptation? Wasn't he nominated?
That's what I want to say, but I'll look that up. While you. Oh, we're going to talk about that. You're going to hear my thoughts on Last Temptation, Castro, because it's an important film that everybody just looks over. Anyway,
I read that book already. Willem Dafoe's acting in this one it stands out a lot because, this is why I hate like being like a student of the craft of acting, because I can't see like you guys. I guess with you guys with like cinema and all that, I can't see
cinema and all that.
Yeah, I can't see the overall picture that you guys see. Me when I start seeing a movie, I hate that this happens to me, but I start seeing what's believable in his reactions. It's not the way to see a film. I know. I try to see the film overall. But
I don't know nearly enough about acting techniques, Castro, but it sounds like you're part of the camp of like, I've heard this a lot. Correct me if I'm wrong. Acting is reacting. Like I've heard that a lot. And it seems that's the camp you're part of, right? Like you need something to bounce off of almost.
For sure. And that's how I hate going into films, but that's how I kind of see it. And that's why I kind of say with this film, it kind of seems like they were putting everything on him. Like those long shots and those kind of, there's nothing happening, but it's more of just his reaction.
Isn't that an actor's dream though? Isn't that an actor's dream? Like
that's why I fell in love with his performance. Like, this guy can't do any wrong. There's nothing. But it was just kind of one of those where, man, I'm trying to think like a good word for it. It's just.
I will say for Willem Dafoe, this wasn't as showy as you'd think a Willem Dafoe performance would be.
Oh yeah, because there's no long monologues. There's no Shakespearean.
That's where you kind of come in with the whole cinematography, where it kind of seems like they were lazy. That's where I was kind of like.
That's what you were thinking, like they were depending.
Yeah, I'm so focused with the acting, like I don't know why they're doing the shaking. Like I understand it, but I just felt like.
What helped me with believing this acting, Castro? I don't know if you got the same thing. Tell me if I'm wrong, because you're the expert when it comes to acting on this. So I felt like what the best thing was for me in Dafoe's acting is that the entire film he was vulnerable. The entire film,
for sure.
Especially the scene where Oscar Isaac's character tells him, "I'm moving, I'm dipping with peace."
Except for one, and my favorite scene of them all.
Which one?
When the priest comes and takes him out.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Dude,
he makes the priest
but again, character arc. We see him vulnerable to the entire picture until he's
like, you know what? There's no when he starts talking, that's why we're talking about the Bible. That's kind of where it came out. Yeah. We're talking there's no letter sent by whoever saying that he's real. And that makes him think, and then he's like, what was it?
No. But he's basically mostly, if I'm not mistaken, like he's mostly talking about himself. Like there's no letter describing. Himself. Yeah, like there's no letter describing me and my existence. Like nobody's gonna really remember me if I don't do something. Yeah.
I felt like that was a strong kind of.
No, you're right. He had some I don't know, like some ground to stand on at that point. Like we saw him more confident. I agree.
Exactly, and then the priest is like.
But what he had going for it, or what surprised me about this performance with Dafoe, is that when he's like the older brother thing was definitely something that he's vulnerable with. The artist he admires, the Paul character, he's vulnerable. He's like a little kid
exactly, especially with him,
and seeks approval and seeks like this acceptance and seeks to live while doing what he loves. But I just thought it was so interesting. Like we discovered that through the entire film that his brother Theo was supporting him financially, and that's how he ate.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I just found that fascinating. It gave me this vulnerability that I had never seen in a Dafoe part before, if I'm being honest.
See, and this is why I like this podcast, because I'm starting to understand the bigger picture, and it helps me with my acting, understanding why certain directions were taken, and that's why I didn't understand them with this film. But
one of my favorite scenes too.
Dafoe can't do wrong.
Yeah, one of my favorite scenes too, by the way, Castro, the priest scene was fantastic. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's just I wish I could give you more. Just as an actor, I hate that's my perspective when I see a film. I'm just going into the acting. Like now I'm understanding the whole bigger picture, but I just go into the acting. Is that believable? What was that reaction for? Yeah. It sucks, but that's how I go into it.
So out of curiosity, was it kind of, I guess maybe frustrating when you saw these parts where it was just him kind of being in nature, and you're like, they're just kind of watching him awkwardly climb up a mountain or put dirt on his face? Like, was that kind of like,
that's
you're
what
not
I'm saying.
Doing anything, you're just watching Dafoe.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Like, I go with Carlos. It's like maybe I was thinking they're being lazy. The editing was kind of like,
yeah, they didn't have enough story to tell, so they just said, Dafoe, put dirt on your face.
Exactly. I feel like everything was just weighed up on.
I think that was the exact same
magic Dafoe.
No, I get you though, Castro. Like honestly, I think you're giving us a big perspective on how an actor watches a picture, but also how a general audience member is going to see this and not look at the filmmaking and the story and the depth. They're looking at the performance and why it's believable and why I should care about it.
No, I'll be completely honest. This is one of those films that I would like kind of put up for the podcast, and I would say like, let's watch it. But if I put it up for my family, they look at it like one of those Oscar films. Like, see, it's a bunch of like pretentious artists sitting in a booth voting for these films, and I'm like, no, it does something. But it's not a general audience film. I don't know. I don't feel like
no.
And it's gonna vibe.
Sandra tells me this. She told me again. I was having a conversation with my in-laws, and my brother-in-law was like, "Man, I love listening to Carlos and Miguel, my nephew, like talk because they talk about movies with this passion, and they know like they get into this deep conversation." And I don't know anything about what they're talking about. So I kind of just tune out. But I love hearing the conversation because I didn't know movies could be so explorative. I just thought movies were something to do on a Sunday night, you know? And Sandra tells me this all the time. He's like, it's because some of the movies you pick are so artsy. I don't get it. I don't care. Like, and that's fair.
Conversation
that's
with my
fair.
wife.
Yeah.
It's completely fair. It's completely fair. But it's refreshing to hear people like when they see our conversations. I've heard people like say like, oh man, like I didn't see the big picture. That's a big deal, dude. That's like,
you know what? Also, there's films that I've seen that's again why I place it so high. Like her.
yeah.
To me, I think like when we hear directing, we hear actors, we hear producing, editing, and all this kind of stuff. I feel like there's a lot of people that can look at that and be like, well, that's essential. We need that and all that. And this is one of those few films that I feel like validates my craft. Like it validates.
Oh no.
Like they even made a joke, I think, at the last Oscars where they're like, what's cinematography? It's like, oh, they're the people who help bring the food onto set and, you know, like they'll set up the tables and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, we've been told that they have something to do with cameras. Well, anyway, the nominations for the best cinematography, and they did that last year, but it was because it was in the same year
because
as
of
the
the whole
Oscars.
controversy.
Yeah, the Oscars were trying to see if maybe they could give that award during the commercial break so they could have more time for the best actor and the best film.
That's right. That's right.
And this film and like her, and there's so many other films.
But even your choices, like, or some of the films we've talked about, her we haven't, which deserves its own episode in its own right. But her, this film, and then like another film you recommended to me that has been one of my favorite films of all time is The Artist. They have so much storytelling without depending on dialogue, without depending on certain direction. It's all visual storytelling, and
even like the one I showed you guys, but I don't know if we'll really get a chance to talk about it in the podcast. I don't know. It's still kind of up for debate, but Where the Wild Things Are. It's one of those films that I feel like beautiful. It's trying to do more with the camera, and it's like I said, it validates my craft because it shows that is one of the ways that we tell stories.
Oh yeah, I agree. Let's just put it this way: if at Eternity's Gate didn't have the visual storytelling, that if it was just shot statically with no camera movement, with a 3-shot insert, whatever, it wouldn't have been as effective. It would have been under the rug. It would have been under the rug. It would have been like, I wouldn't have cared for it. Yeah, it would have been like, I see what Dafoe's doing and I see what they're trying to do with the story, but it seems like a fun pick that maybe was trying to be pretentious and Oscar-y, but didn't really do anything. Right. And this one, at least, keep them coming, Delao, because I think that I tend to pick pictures that are more kind of introspective in the directing side of things and how certain directing works. And Castro's obviously picking stuff that it's performance heavy, but also culturally important. And Yoko's going to pick stuff that we wouldn't even think is important to the discussion of cinema. So I think that the visual storytelling side of things is important, dude. It's one of the most important things ever. So keep them coming. I think that's great.
And to add to the whole William Dafoe, obviously he nailed the part of being the obsessive, lost painter. And one of the scenes that I really like is, and it shows his performance a lot, is where for some reason he's fading in and out, and he sees a bunch of sheep and then a woman, and he tells the woman, "I want to paint you."
Yeah,
his obsession.
That's how the film opens.
Was it Are you referring to the beginning? Because there's the opening, and then there's the second time around. The second time around is more manic. Like it's
exactly. And then he's an obsessed painter that's trying to get the frame, like you guys are saying. Yeah. And he starts to move the girl, and the lady's like, "Whoa, what's going on?" Right?
Yeah, you're hurting me in French.
You just tell. You just see his performance.
No, don't it's almost like it's almost like right. It's almost like we see that scene because it doesn't matter what state he's in, as long as he has. If Van Gogh forgets everything about his life except the fact that he's a painter, when he goes to sleep and when he wakes up, he's gonna wake up saying, "I gotta paint you. I gotta paint something." And that's exactly what that kind of shows. Is like he was probably dehydrated and left in the desert and had nothing.
By the way,
but he wanted to paint. He needed to paint something.
By the way, my theory, and we, it's like
bring it.
The conversations. If you think about why that scene in particular was given at the beginning of the film and then given through midway towards the end of the film,
catch-up thing.
Yeah. I think it's because the first scene is us just thinking that he was the artist that just went up and said, "Let me paint you." And people were like, "You want to paint me?" And he's like,
I'm
"Yes,
the
let me
great
paint you."
Vincent Van
Yeah,
Gogh.
yeah. And if you notice, it's a very clean shot. The way that it was colored was very natural. The camera wasn't too shaky yet. It kind of gave you an idea of what we're getting into. But the second time, the colors were crazy. The bottom lower thirds were all messed up. And it's like, now you understand. You're not thinking from the perspective of like, oh, I know what I'm reading in the books and I know what other people are saying. Now you're seeing his perspective. You're seeing how manic, how obsessive, how vulnerable this interaction is, and what he's trying to accomplish and what's going on. Even when he brings a line after. This is right before the line where I think he says to the priest, he's like, "If I don't paint, I will die." Like, you know, or I don't know. He says that to the doctor. Before he says, "If I don't paint, I'll die," and you see that kind of like, "I need to paint you now. I see you. This image is here and needs to be captured," and it's all validating.
Become a part of him. It's become a part of him. Sure.
If the script didn't work, Willem Dafoe's acting worked.
I
don't know.
I'm sorry.
I think because we think of scripts and we think of screenwriting as linear most of the time, and sometimes it's the best stories that take this form that isn't linear. I mean, the obvious one is like a story, something like Pulp Fiction, which isn't told in linear form, but it's one of the best screenplays of all time, you know? And I'm not saying that this film wasn't chronologically linear, but they just felt like vignettes of his life. And I think that's what they were going for. And I'm cool with it. I get it. I get the approach.
I need actually to understand that.
This is here where I thought the movie lost me a bit. Was in the screenplay as well. Mostly like the first like 3/4 of this movie, I thought it was good, especially the first half of the movie. I was really into it. It was just this scene, basically right after he talked with the priest, and then it kind of like starts meandering a little bit, and I think the script there, I think it just kind of got lost in what it was doing, and it just I kind of lost interest.
Okay,
and that's where I think where the screenplay was kind of like okay, but it got back up, especially right before the ending. But that's just me.
I don't feel like the script though was trying to be like a story in the 3-act structure and all that. Like typically, it was trying to follow. And I think we mentioned at the beginning, or Carlos did, that a lot of these are supposed to be more accurate towards accounts that people had that were written about him during his lifetime, or that he wrote himself in reflection.
Yeah, it's almost like a bunch of like I know this isn't what happened. But it's almost like the screenwriter put up a post in the corkboard or whatever and said, "Looking for Vincent Van Gogh stories. If you have any, come and tell me them." You know, and a bunch of people are just like, "Hey man, I saw him do this, I saw him do that, I witnessed him do this." Or Vincent Van Gogh himself submitted, "Hey man, I did this in my life too, by the way." And he kind of just got all of it and said, "Okay, how am I going to tell this story in chronological order by accounting like all the perspectives of all the different types of people?"
And actually, I do get that, especially that. I mean, that's what, as I said, like I was enjoying what was happening throughout the the whole beginning part of the middle part.
Do you think because the final act was so smooth, Yoko? Like the final act
it just kind of lost me. I thought it was just meandering a bit. Maybe because I had already seen way too much of the other style.
I have a theory. I have a theory about that, though. I have a theory about that. Everything that we see after the priest is basically leading up to his death. And you know, if we read enough about Vincent Van Gogh, we know that the film portrayed a theory that may not be true. It was just a version of what we saw in his head. I mean, Vincent Van Gogh committed suicide. He shot himself. At least the most accurate historical accounts prove that he shot himself with a gun. It wasn't two kids playing with a gun or whatever. It was he shot himself. So everything leading up to his death, Yoko, this is my theory. It may not be true. You guys tell me. My theory is that he wanted to end his life as to rest, to finally get out of the madness. So to tell the final act, or not even the final act, the final second half of the last act in that style is like he knew what he was doing. We see his funeral, and it was like the most peaceful, tranquil.
You can kind of validate that with the conversation with his brother, where he's like, because the brother's like, oh, your paintings are going to start selling. There's writing very good reviews about you. And he's like, I don't care anymore. Like, that's not what I care about. I just want to paint and I want to be alone and I want to get out of this place. It's too complicated. And when he was just alone in his paintings, he was happy. And when society wasn't complicating his life, he was happy. And then, like, it's suicide, but it's kind of like,
it's an out. It's an escape.
Was it odd that in a way it almost feels like his mind was destroying him? Really, I mean, the schizophrenia, what I think they now like diagnose it as, it was destroying him, but it was almost like going out on his own terms. It wasn't. He didn't have to know if it. He didn't have to know if it was him or if it was somebody else.
End of his own story.
He even wrote down or the account where he's like, "Oh, he kind of looked like Billy the Kid." And they shot me and they threw away my art pieces and then I just walked in and I'm here to die and my brother's coming. Just tell my brother to come and that's like,
I totally get you, Yoko. I understand. I hate when movies do that. I hate when we're in the style already that we're invested in and then you just totally shift it. I hate it. Trust me, I'm with you. But I think this one, it wasn't as jarring for me because I feel like it was justified. Like, if we're inside Vincent's brain for the entire film, this is the part of his brain that finally got. It's almost like when people know, like people who have cancer and like they know they're coming to an end and they start selling their things and they start making amends with people and they start kind of like they're in that tranquil place where they know they're gonna go and they're accepting it. They're not fighting it. They're not fighting death. I feel like we're in that tranquil part of his brain where he's like, I know I'm going out. I know I'm going out on my own terms. And the camera movement and everything reflects that. Like we're finally in a tranquil place of his mind. That's how I justify it. That's
even
how
like like the funeral. It just seems it's so happy that like now people are going around and respecting him and looking at his work and even choosing which ones they want to buy. Like I don't know if you saw, but there's the couple that are making looks back and forth. Like, do you want this one? It's like no, but that one's perfect. And then going and talking, and he's just able to rest in colors and. It's like I said, it's on his own terms. It's trying to be like he was troubled while living, but he found his place. What would be the point of the ending line? And this will be my final thought on the film. What would be the point of the final line that we saw in the picture that we saw the line by Oscar Isaac's character? Oh yeah, Paul
Gauguin, where he wrote about his friend. He was basically bullshitting the entire film saying, just like artists do, you compete and you want to be better than your peers. And then he finally says he was a genius. Yeah. He was a genius and he's admired and his work will be celebrated for years to come. I mean, what would be the point of adding that on a still in the end credits, if not to kind of prove what Van Gogh was wanting to do right, you know?
I do like those final lines, and by the way, it's one of those where I was about to finish the movie, but then out of nowhere, like it's one of those surprise, like oh, stickers. But I do love what he says at the end, where he always insisted in painting in yellow, and I'm like, but I hate yellow, but I wanted to paint in red. And that's the thing between us. But then he put that yellow there, and then I pressed my red on it, and purple came out, or something like that. So that I could it's like they both created something out of it, and it was really cool. The only
thing I didn't like between those two characters was like. Maybe this is right, maybe this is wrong. I feel like towards the end, especially when it affected him so much that Paul's character was moving, it started to feel romantic to a certain point. It started to feel like, am I supposed to believe that these two characters were somehow intimately involved? Or, you know what I mean? That's the only thing that I felt like, well, is that true? Is that not true?
No, I feel like if you look at what Van Gogh was trying to do, and I guess the message through his dialogue and everything, he was just trying to paint what he actually saw, and he was trying to show people like, this is what I'm seeing, and this is reality, and like, please understand me. And I think he just wanted people to understand him more than anything, and because Paul was a painter that was willing to listen to him and not just say, oh, your work's garbage. Like he was willing to say like, no, I think you have something that could be refined into true art that people can admire. And
what a bullshit thing that even we do today. All of us have filmmaker friends, and you guys know who I'm talking about. All of us have filmmaker friends that push the envelope for you that like they push the envelope for you. Like they're good filmmakers, right? By all definition of the word. But when they see your work, they either tell you, "Oh, that shit is great, dude," and you got this and you got that, or they say, "That could have been better. You know, you could have been doing this." And it's just artists being full of shit to each other, because Paul's character knew that Van Gogh was better than him, but but he wanted to put him down because he knew Van Gogh was in that vulnerable place where he could be on top of him the whole time he was alive. And then when he's finally died, he can honor him, say, I always knew of Van Gogh's genius. Like, it's such a full of shit artist thing and then that also, still exists to this day. Like,
you know how they try to show that in the film? He says, I need to go to Madagascar or someplace, which I think he actually did, according to like history. He's like, I need to go someplace where they've never heard of painting, so I can paint and I can make something new. And then he goes back to the little small town where basically nobody bothers him as artist. I can't be here. I need to go back to Paris.
I need to go back to society,
and I
need to be around people. Yeah,
and it just shows you. It just showed you that, I mean, as much as he tried to have it all together, I mean. Yeah. I mentioned that Gauguin's outfit reminded me of a filmmaker that we know that just as when they walk around, we recognize them. They're a lovely fellow that just like they walk around in their perfect coat and everything. But
it is what it is, man. I mean, but again, that was just a character arc that we explore and we understand as artists, as filmmakers, and it's interesting to feel like I felt that. I felt like I'm doing some of the best work of my life or of my career that I've done so far. And people are just like, nah, bro, you're not there yet, man. You're not there yet. I don't know. It's interesting to kind of explore, but anyways, final thoughts on the film, guys. Final thoughts.
Thank you for giving it a try. I mean, this is my own little, like, I needed more people to talk about this. So thank you.
Yeah, just like with The Lighthouse, man, keep them coming, dude. These are really good films to explore.
Terrific film, terrific picture that made me think for weeks after about it, so I enjoyed it, man.
There's not one film that you recommend where I regret. It's just they're good.
They're coming.
No.
It is one of those that I'm glad to put this on my bucket list.
Yeah,
and maybe one in the future I will see it again, especially because that first half I really like, as I mentioned, and maybe once I see it again, I'll get more into that second half. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's really like this. Give it a watch. But yes, it is artsy.
It's artsy.
Folks.
I thought it was interesting. This is the last thing I'll say. I thought it was interesting that it's an artsy film about art. Like how much more like artsy can you get? How much more meta can you get? It's an artsy.
By the way, one of Ashley's all-time favorite artists is like Van Gogh, and I mean, like her favorite color is yellow, and she admires all of his paintings that he did, and kind of like what his life was like. But this is still too much for her to kind of like sit down and bear, because like I was like, babe, you have to watch it. It's about Van Gogh, and the colors are beautiful, and the cinematography. She's like, I know what you're getting me into. I don't want it. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy a date night. Like
I think that's what happens with Sandra, because one of her favorite artists of all time is Frida Kahlo, and like we watched the film, right? We watched Frida, and she's like, she enjoys it for what it is. It's a film about Frida. It's a film with Salma Hayek playing Frida. Right. And I sit there and I'm like, hey, you know, the director's very like, she's Julie Taymor, and she did Across the Universe, and she was trying to make this for this film, and she's like, I don't care, don't ruin the movie for me.
That's what it is. And then plus, like, I'm a cinematography person, so of course I'm doing the same thing. But I'm like, can you notice in this shot the way that they shake when they did this? And she's like, no, we're gonna watch The Babysitter. Just screw it. We're watching The Babysitter. And that's what we did the other night. We watched The Babysitter.
Anyways, awesome, man. Castro, sorry, you were transitioning us into the
folks, it's that last segment, everybody's favorite segment, Yoko's Tower Crown.
Now it's my Tower Crown. Oh well,
I love how Yoko's like, time. Oh well, this is his podcast, but this is my Tower Crown.
Yoko.
I put myself out too early. Let's see. Okay. Oh well, welcome to the Tower Crown. This is the debate show where the audience tells us what are we gonna debating.
Yes, it is.
So we put up a poll on Facebook about the best Willem Dafoe performances. And just to kind of remind the people out there, these were the options.
Numero uno.
So we had The Lighthouse,
Perfect by all accounts.
The Florida Project.
I want to see that one.
Oh,
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
Spooder, man.
And The Last Temptation of Christ.
yes.
Ooh.
Yes.
So y'all voted, and the winners of this poll were Spider-Man against The Last Temptation of Christ.
Here we go.
I guess our audience was already in that Easter mood, and they were like, "Oh, you know what?"
Damn.
I think that's what it was. I don't think nearly as many people have seen that film.
I think I saw it when I was little.
Well, the poll proved me wrong.
I know. I thought The Lighthouse would have been a shoe-in. Like,
Yeah.
Hey, you know
I
what?
also thought so.
This is going to be interesting. These are the two polar opposites of films, like a Spider-Man movie
yes.
and a Scorsese film.
okay, I can already predict. Okay, it's every time we've had this, the polls have leaned towards what's popular. It's
Oh
leaned
yeah,
towards that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I'm curious where this is going to go, but I'm going to be moderating, so that would lovely people at home know. But what I want to focus on,
So all the rules are gonna go out the window.
no, what I want to focus on, because it's obviously we're not choosing this based on genre, we're choosing this based off like the actor because it's an actor piece. Which
Shit,
one of
well,
these?
That's part of my notes.
Okay, well,
Scratch that.
like I'm gonna ask multiple questions. I'm gonna moderate in a
Yeah.
way that it's not just gonna be one last question. I'm gonna have a few sprinkle through. But to kick off, how does this show Dafoe's range as an actor? So that's it's nudging in one direction. But like Spider-Man, can you go first? How do you feel like this really shows range and potential as an actor?
Okay, so Spider-Man. I guess I'll be debating for Spider-Man, and with Castor kind of like leaning in, right?
All right, I got a couple.
If I'm
points.
correct?
All right.
All right. Well, so you want to know how?
Why couldn't we argue the directing, Bilal? Why couldn't we argue the
that's not-
directing?
No.
That's not about
No,
that.
no. He knows what he wants. Let the boy choose.
I know. I'm just
Let the boy.
Let
Okay,
the boy
points off for boy.
Damn it!
I am a man.
Go, Yoko, start talking.
I'm a real boy. Anyway.
Oh
Sorry.
wow! How does this movie prove that Willem Dafoe has a wide range of acting?
Yeah, that was my question. Go on.
Ooh. So many, man.
Well, first of all,
go on.
this role is just so awesome. Watching Willem Dafoe really suck the juice out of this role because it is so awesome. Showing basically being that friendly kind of parent figure to Peter Parker, especially towards Peter Parker, more than his son.
Right.
And then once we see him starting to lose his mind, we get this complete opposite of him, where he has all the other range of just like mugging, this awesome mugging, this laugh, this
unique for sure.
this perfect you that he has, that becomes so iconic that it's still being remembered, even though we've already passed from this incarnation of Spider-Man. Like after 20 years, we still talk about how he was a great Green Goblin.
Yeah, I feel like he's one of those OG true villains. Like he didn't have any. Like we had Danny DeVito, we had all those guys, but he's one of those guys that really nailed the part where you could see the transformation. Right, he loses, they sell the company or whatever, or the company that he started. So you see his transformation, man. With The Last Temptation, he's had. We've all read that story. He's had, other characters that have done that he could go off of. Whereas with this villain, it's just on him. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, oh, it's the villain. Shit.
Okay. I like it. Okay, a lot of good points. For acting.
That's my first one. I got another one for you.
Okay. So Carlos, your question is, how is this a good superhero film?
I mean, it is. For sure.
You know what's funny is that
It is.
a lot of people, if not most people in the world, regard literally just by selling alone, the Bible is considered the best story of all time.
That's what
It is. And Jesus is seen as a superhero, by the way.
Yeah.
And
Okay, well,
so by definition, this is a superhero.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
yeah.
well, that was a dud question. Acting. How does this show his range?
Oh
ready.
man, look, this picture.
Somebody else knocked out that character out of the park, and you know.
No, so look, this picture was a
Mel Gibson's
1988
movie, come
religious drama that, quite frankly, was tough to make. Even before they casted Dafoe, they knew there was going to be controversy in this film going in. For those of you that don't know, I hope we explore this in a later episode of this film, because the film is about Jesus Christ accepting the temptation of getting off the cross. That's kind of if you know the story of the Bible, you know that he died, and he could have got in because he was powerful, right? He was a god. He was God's son on earth. That he could have chosen to get off the cross. He could have chosen to say, "Hey, I'm not God's son. Take me off the cross. We're good. Forgive me, whatever." And he could have gone on to live a life of having a wife and having children and living a normal human being life. That's what this film explores, is literally the last temptation. What if Jesus would have done that? What if he would have gotten off the cross? Would we have the same story we had today? Would we, Christians believe naturally that that's the act that saved us from damnation, right? So that's what the film explores. And to pick somebody like Willem Dafoe to lead this, coming off of films like Platoon, which was an Academy Award nominated film for him, it's so interesting. The approach of this film, the approach of the acting in this film is, we're going to have Jesus and the 12 disciples with New York accents, by the way, with New York accents to humanize these people in modern times. And then the Romans with English accents, so that we don't really identify them as an American audience. And to show range with Willem Dafoe to play a character from thousands of years ago in a New York accent with a New York kind of girth in his voice,
for sure,
while also presenting one of the most dramatic, dynamic characters of all time as we know it in storytelling. How is that not range to show these three different iterations in one character?
I mean, you're basically telling me that it's like Leonardo DiCaprio doing a New York accent with Romeo and Juliet. I mean,
yeah.
How is that not, as an actor, how is that not a challenge? How is that not an exploration of range in your acting ability?
I mean, just an accent is not doesn't really
exactly
mean
like the accent
actual,
off.
you know.
No, but the accent.
I see where it's hard to do that for sure, but it's
the accent isn't the most impressive part of this role. I'm just saying that's one of the things as a challenge as an actor that Willem Dafoe had to explore within himself to say, how am I going to play Jesus, a Jew who grew up in a certain part of the world where they don't even speak English, at least, that's how we know it, in modern times for a modern audience, and to explore such a controversial subject that I'm going to be telling the story of. That's like the actor's dream to a certain point, is to explore a character however you want within these concepts, within these refinements.
I mean, that's definitely impressive. It's just not reality.
It's not as. But
why does an actor is never looking to play a real person? Well, that's not the point.
That's true, but you have to make it come across as something that's believable.
I love that James Cameron, what he says, like James Cameron says about movies, like, when was it ever real?
Yeah,
there was a ladder there. There was a guy with half of his ass crack hanging out there, half a wall there, kind of nothing there. When was it ever real?
We're talking about the acting perspective. Does it come out real? Like, is it believable? Real probably not the good word.
Are you ready for the next question?
Go for it.
That's it.
Okay.
Sure.
What made the I guess film better? Was it the script, or was it the fact that they casted Dafoe? I know that kind of plays into range, but
that's actually a good question for both movies.
Yeah. So
say it again.
So what was it that made the film better? Was it the script, or was it the casting of Dafoe? Like if they had chosen somebody else, there was many actors that you can choose from the whole pot. You choose anybody else, or you choose Dafoe. Did Dafoe add, or was it just the fact that it was a good script that really
said it.
As far as Spider-Man, Dafoe made this movie as iconic.
So many iconic
fact that it was especially now the only bad thing that Dafoe had to go through this movie was the fact that they actually covered his face through part of his
the performance.
Well, that's what makes it
with that
voice.
Power
Like,
Ranger.
even his voice.
Yes. Like
Well,
you can
then,
still
well, then become
imagine
a
now
voice
his
actor
voice.
at that point.
That's part of the acting. That's what we're talking
No.
about.
But here's the thing, though. There were concepts with him where he had this makeup on. It was just showing his face, and now you could. Once you see those pictures, especially, and you see how he performs as the Green Goblin, you could definitely imagine. You could definitely see exactly what he's doing under that mask, and you could, like, the thing is, so it's his specific rhythms. It's his specific rhythms that he gives. His look. His look itself is so amazing.
There's one scene that really stands out. Go for it.
Sorry. No, go ahead, Gus.
No, there's just where what he's trying to get to is like, I there's one scene where, I don't know if this is a good one where he's talking to himself in the mirror, and he's going back and forth between the characters. Dude, that takes a lot of skills. I don't know how they pulled that off. Maybe different takes or it was the same, but that just shows your skills of he's going between the villain and him trying to keep it together, kind of his character.
The Last Temptation. I get what you guys are saying with that, and that's fine. The Last Temptation didn't need the gimmicks. It didn't need anything to enhance his performance. His performance alone.
So
these monologues.
Playing Christ,
these monologues.
Could be the gimmick.
These monologues. But you don't need it. That's my point. You don't need it. It only enhances the performance. So the performance by itself is no. It's how he used the script. It's the monologues that he played as Jesus Christ, and the Sermon on the Mount, and the moment before he's going to get crucified, and the monologue he has with God and his Father. Those were all pure moments of acting that didn't need to be enhanced by anything other than the actor.
But I feel like that's already been done, so he could go off of those performances. Whereas with the villain, it's trying to create the villain.
No, I'm sorry, but comic book villain, amazing comic book villains have existed since the 70s. That's not.
He's one of the first OGs that truly nailed it. We're not talking about Arnold, chill, none of that shit.
Even before the Burton
he's the one that
films.
ushered this new era of comic
exactly
books.
With special effects and all this. He perfected it when he's on the wing.
No, the thing is that
look, to say what Dafoe did in Last Temptation is something we've already seen.
You're saying that there's nothing that he added. It was just him.
No, I didn't say there's nothing that he added. I said that he enhanced the script. He enhanced these monologues in a vulnerable state. Like
nobody else could have done,
like we've never seen in the character of Jesus and the character of his life and the inner struggle of will I get crucified, will I not get crucified? These are questions that only Dafoe could have presented. Look, if you throw this into the conversation, we've only seen biblical dramas of the current state of the Bible. We never saw an inner struggle of Jesus's decision to die on the cross, and Dafoe presented this in a state of panic and sweat and this inner struggle of, well, do I want to live a life? I'm falling in love with somebody. Do I want to live the life that I can see myself with her and having kids and doing this thing, or do I fulfill my destiny? And that's the whole role. That's what
I'm trying to get at is that as us as audience, there's nothing. Oh shit. Because we already seen that performance.
Because it's not a popularity contest. Of course, Spider-Man is going to naturally take the audience into.
We're talking about
what makes it character, like his laugh.
Better.
What's up? His voice. That's what makes that character unique to Dafoe.
I understand. Well, yes, I understand what you're saying for
the Last Temptation of Christ.
These moments, but to me, if I'm going to see a play. And nothing but the stage and the actor is what's impressing me. I don't need the gimmicks. Like that impresses me more than the laugh, than the extra things that I don't need.
For sure, but you're not saying anything about the acting. You're just saying that you delivered this cool performance. Well, a lot of people deliver cool performances. So what made him unique to that performance?
Well, because it's never been done before.
Would another Green Goblin have
that to your point, that had never been done before. To show Jesus as a vulnerable character that has an inner struggle, that has never been done before.
Would you say that that's more credit to the script rather than the performance?
Exactly.
That it had a
No,
good
I
script
think
to go with?
it's a beautiful marriage of the two. I think that the script wouldn't have been able to do it with a good without a good actor, and
for
the
sure.
actor wouldn't have been able to do it without good words. I think it's a beautiful marriage of the two. I don't think one is over the other at this point.
But did he bring anything that only Dafoe could have done? That's what I'm
yes,
saying.
absolutely. That's what I mean. The vulnerability that was shown in Christ in this character, I wouldn't have seen it with anybody else. Who else are you going to point at me that's going to do something like that the way Dafoe does in his voice, in his panic, and in how he uses his voice to tell a story? I can't see it with anybody else.
But I feel
Okay.
like that stands out more in the villain. Go for it.
Okay.
Okay, last question. And this is for both of you. Choose whoever wants to answer first. Which film rhymes more with Spider-Man?
I would say possibly
Batman.
Spider-Man.
Okay, Carlos, argument.
Try to
The
sound it
Last Temptation of Spider-Man. That's what this film is actually called. I just wanted you guys.
Wiggle that in there.
All right, I think I have my winner. Let me
Yeah.
message the good old
Let's see.
Yoko's.
I can see Carlos getting frustrated.
No, it's because look, there's
No, I get it.
wait, no, there's a whole before you give your verdict, Yoko, there's a whole camp of people who this film was controversial and it was kind of swept under the rug, so much so that it was banned in China, in Japan. It was banned in countries because of its controversial topic.
Wait a minute,
And
it was
therefore-
banned? I'm gonna take off points.
It was banned, and therefore it didn't get in the audience it deserved. So most people haven't seen this picture.
Well, you know which one they've seen? Spider-Man.
my God.
All around the world.
So there's a whole world of like, you need to explore. I screened, Silence for Austin and for the Lao, and it's part of this same, like, these two are the only two R-rated films that Scorsese has made without any cussing, because he wants to like honor the background behind it. Like, if you don't know, Scorsese was going to be a priest before he was going to be a director.
Yeah.
So he like really takes these movies with care. And people need to see The Last Temptation of Christ.
And Sam
need to see
Raimi
it.
was planning to be a superhero, but look what.
Well, that didn't work out now, did it?
Huh? So
All
we're
right,
taken
Yoko.
to Spider-Man.
Camelot.
So the
And
winner
here's-
is
I like it. I like it.
Really? I was expecting to lose. Wow.
Explain yourself.
Okay. So I think you guys had points for the Spider-Man team.
Hold on,
You
hold on.
had-
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, because I think you both made like a laundry list of points that I think needs to be like both, just kind of showcased.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
one, I think you nailed it as far as saying that there was range to be shown in Dafoe's character from being both like a homebody and, a family man, but then also kind of twisting over and finding the more kind of like chaotic side of his like acting ability. I think as far as like you saying that this character, when played by him, it, was like he did the most you could do with that role. Like most people have been like, oh, I'm the supervillain. And Dafoe, I think, was trying to like say, no, let's really test his potential. I think all of that was also done in The Last Temptation from what Carlos is arguing. And I think the uniqueness of the role, the challenges that it would bring, the way that this was something that, it's unique because this is obviously a story that's never been told before. And now it's going to be iconicized with Dafoe adds points. The fact that you, Carlos, were bringing up that really it wasn't the script was like a cherry on top, but Dafoe's performances were something that just elevated it to the next level. And this being a Dafoe heavy, no, I'm serious. It's like
I love Castro's like.
Yeah, no, keep going.
Yeah, it's a Dafoe heavy like argument, and I mean, for me trying to say like what is showing me Dafoe's potential, I mean everything is just really hitting on The Last Temptation. I mean, I
think Wee Man could do a Green Goblin?
No. Yeah, he could. No, he could do it, and you know what? It probably would have made money because it's a superhero film. But the fact that like
that's a good one.
Well, that's what I'm arguing. Like, just to add to what you're saying, what I mean, Castro, with this is that it's already a built-in character. Did Dafoe enhance it? Yes, because Dafoe's a damn good actor no matter what he does, right?
Hey,
It's a built-in character that already has like substance to it. Jesus Christ is a built-in character as a hero, not as a human, but as a god. So to humanize the Godhead, it's insane to be able to attempt that. And I think Dafoe has his challenges.
Yeah,
for
it's
it.
challenges,
It's trying to go
large
against
range of
humans.
exploration. It's one of the most, like you said, most dynamic characters you will hear about. Jesus going through the last temptations. I mean, yeah,
I just said because I went through a Catholic school. I feel like that's been.
Oh,
Yeah,
but that's
I've
not
seen
that
it.
hasn't been
I
explored.
need that story.
But in cinema, Castro. But in cinema, has it been explored?
For sure. I was trying to win. You have a lot of points for sure. For sure.
Oh yeah, but yeah, I'm gonna give it to Last Temptation.
But
So yeah.
here's the thing: all your points are invalid because there's no other performer here, no other actor that could say the lines. The itsy bitsy spider.
Oh, you should have brought that up.
You should have thrown it in your argument, Castro.
Yeah,
That would-
you
that
missed
would-
that.
would've
You missed
won.
that. I mean, that would have tipped the scale along with Smiter Man. You know, like I honestly, like
That's
that.
smart.
It was
Listen,
close.
I love Raimi's Spider-Man up to Spider-Man 2. We don't discuss
So the
Spider-Man
fact the
3,
winner
but
is Spider-Man.
no, I love Raimi's Spider-Man. I love the casting choice of Dafoe, but I think that it goes deeper. Like why actors choose certain roles. Like Christopher Lloyd, Doc Brown, was offered the role of a disciple in The Last Temptation, and he turned it down. And when they ask him about it, he says that's been one of the biggest regrets in my career, not to be a part of this film. So there's a lot of Harvey Keitel plays Judas in this picture, and he does an amazing job as Harvey Keitel as Judas. I mean, it's just
Martin
like
Scorsese kind of.
right,
Exactly. When I saw it when I was like 5 years old, dude. I didn't see it. You're seeing it.
It's a New York, like it's a New York modern, not modern, but like a New York humanizing version of the story of Christ and the disciples, and like an exploration of like what if. And Dafoe, it's like if you were here on Broadway, right? Like the role of Jesus Christ will be played by Willem Dafoe this evening, and you're like, holy shit, I want to see this. It's Willem Dafoe playing Jesus Christ. That's like the sell for me. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I feel you. I was just trying to, win.
I wanted to defend this movie to the death, man. Like I thought I was gonna lose, to be honest with you, because obviously it's iconic to see Dafoe as the Green Goblin. He set up the standard for villains for me as a kid because we grew up on these films.
I think like the iconicism behind him as the Green Goblin. I mean, it's like that was the perfect supervillain that I think other people want to play supervillains that have that much character and role. And I think it's because of that Spider-Man that other superhero films could be taken a little bit more seriously, that they weren't just going to be these men in tights just kind of jumping around and all that. And, it's just...
There's a lot of like actors like Anthony Hopkins, whenever he approaches a role, even if it's a mainstream role as a villain, he approaches it like a Shakespearean actor. And I think that's something that Dafoe kind of does. Like he's going to approach a supervillain comic book character as a Shakespearean trained actor.
Yeah, there's a ton of other actors that I think would have taken the role and said, "No, it's a fun role. Yeah, I'm a supervillain. Like I'm gonna be extra mean for no reason, and I'm just gonna push kids." And but Dafoe was like, "No, I'm taking this as
Dafoe." I will say this:
character.
Dafoe set up the stage for people like Jake Gyllenhaal and Spider-Man. He set up the stage for these iconic actors who are good actors, not good character actors, good actors, to play the villain in like a compelling form. I accept that.
Yeah, by this time we forget, but the first Spider-Man movie, like actually thanks to that movie, thanks to that success, we have the universe of superheroes that we have.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, because
it was the highest grossing film until Avatar came along, I think.
Oh shit.
It held the record for the highest grossing film until Avatar came along and kind of took it away from it.
I still remember.
Maybe it was Titanic. Was Titanic? No,
Yeah,
Titanic was before. Oh, Titanic was before Spider-Man.
It didn't get to the billion.
No. But Titanic came before it. It was like the highest grossing film for a long time until. Anyways, but anyways, I really implore you guys, man. Like you have to rewatch this film. I remember my first vision of this film was like you guys know, like when you go to Blockbuster and you go to the gold section, this film was always in the gold section. And I was always like, why? Like, what's this about? And then I saw it years later and I rewatched it like as an adult, I guess. And again, going through all of the questions you ask yourself as a Christian, like I grew up in that Christian background and I have that Christian kind of bone in me.
Right.
So to ask yourself the what if questions that this movie asks you and to see somebody like Dafoe fulfill that role, oh my gosh, I highly implore you guys to check this movie out.
Also, the memories I have from this movie is as a kid in Mexico,
Uh-huh.
in the chat and a channel, the Canal 5. It would always be around this time, right on Easter. It would be La Última Tentación de Cristo.
Oh
Yeah,
my
dude,
god.
oh my god.
It would be like it would be one of those
That's
movies that would always be
Then the
there.
tamale lady outside. Tamales, tamales. Tenemos de rojo,
Anyways,
de verde.
they're both iconic roles. I think they're both iconic. Like you can see where Dafoe's range comes out in it, but everybody's seen Spider-Man, man. You have to open yourself up to more cinema. Watch The Last Temptation of Christ.
Yeah.
It's one of Dafoe's best performances. I
Also,
guarantee it.
I could not make this like argument of like if Dafoe as an actor was, let's say, trying to pitch himself to other films, that he would look at The Last Temptation of Christ and then he'd look at Spider-Man and think, let me show you Spider-Man. This is what's gonna make you want me. You know, like I think
Criterion.
That's a good way to put it.
It's on
Oh, you don't think
Criterion,
so?
by the
You
way.
would think he would go with The Last Temptation? I gotta see it now.
yeah, I think so.
For
I
Resident
mean,
for sure.
like just the approach of this character and what he does, and it's just so good. There's a
I guess I'm just
scene.
scarred from all the religion.
No, yeah, as a kid, this was the type of film that would bore you as a kid, I promise you. But like, there's this scene where he's sitting by the fire, and he's sitting by the fire. It's this scene specifically where he's sitting by the fire and like talking to God and talking about his struggle, and it's just him. He's not playing off anybody else but himself, and it's genius. It's terrific.
By the way, Castro, along with that, you also have to see Silence. We Carlos showed it to us recently, and I'm still shook. Like it's
Oh shit!
I can't sleep at night. I haven't.
You're exaggerating.
it's because they're like
No,
Castro, like
it's
before we
so
jumped off. Yeah,
Heavy.
Silence?
before we
Silence
jumped
or
on this
silence?
podcast, silence.
Silence.
Before we jumped on this podcast, for everybody listening out there, we were talking about religion and we were talking about
We're getting heavy.
heavy questions on religion. And Silence asks you like the most existential question when it comes to believing in God. And like,
dude, I love those.
and The Last Temptation too. I'm telling you, like, this was almost
Also,
part of a
a
trilogy.
Spider-Man actor is in that film, so you know you got that.
That's true. Andrew Garfield plays
Andrew
the lead in
Garfield.
Silence.
Hey.
No, but it's a terrific picture, guys. So you would love the questions it asks, like as a believer, right? As a
I
Christian
think
or a Catholic.
if you don't do that, Carlos, like I'll do that as like one of my next picks for
one
sure.
of your next picks.
It really
Yeah.
got you like that, Dilo? It really.
We needed a minute. It was actually
Those are the ones I want.
It was the same night we were actually watching Locke. We were
Yeah.
watching Locke, and it was funny because Austin can
Oh, yeah, I
verify
remember
it.
you said
But
that.
Austin was like, I kind of don't want to show you Locke now because we had watched that, and we're all just like, damn it, like that's just like
I'm here
we
to
have to do
spread.
it.
I'm here to spread the gospel of Martin
Of Scorsese.
Scorsese. As him not being the mobster guy. He's not just the mobster guy. He knows how
I'm
to
sorry,
tell some
Carlos,
amazing.
I just
that
thought he was
across, man, 'cause that's what
guy.
Anybody on the bingo card?
Right, I know, right? No, by the way, but Delao like mentioned. By the way, Delao's kind of. I like seeing the perspective of his view through Scorsese films because he's never seen Goodfellas. He's never seen Casino.
Nah.
He's never.
Carlos,
Seen,
you
he's
believe
never.
that? You believe that, Carlos?
I mean, some people don't watch those types of movies. I don't know. He says he's never seen them.
If you've ever watched TV your whole life, it's on TV.
It never came out.
Yeah, but so
I
is The
haven't seen
Godfather.
Casino.
Austin's never seen The Godfather, and The Godfather's on TV every day of the week. I mean,
Ghostbusters.
Look
Austin,
into the
there's-
camera. Delo, you've never watched Goodfellas.
I just have issues, man. Like you've never
Hey,
seen that
that
Eternity
might be
Gate.
a film we talk about on this podcast. There's plenty to talk about in that film.
It's a movie that you have to watch. So
But that's why I'm telling you guys, like I'm showing you guys films like Hugo and Silence, like all of these non-mobster
Fantastic
Scorsese
Mr.
pictures.
Fox.
was
I
funny.
don't know, freaking.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah.
I think that about does it for this episode of the WatchTower podcast. Thank you guys for joining us. We implore you to watch At Eternity's Gate. Fantastic picture, and it's kind of a bridge film. I feel like the last film we did was Locke, which was kind of like an easy watch to a certain degree in terms of like not as artsy, obviously.
Yeah.
So I feel like At Eternity's
It's a
Gate
little
was
artsy, and then this one's gonna get a little more artsy, and then I think Fellini's
yeah,
gonna be our.
it's gonna bridge what we're watching next. Next episode, we're gonna do a Federico Fellini masterpiece, 8.5. We're gonna do 8.5. This is my pretentious choice. I saw this film like at a film festival for the first time. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Like on the big screen, I was able to see it for the first time ever, and it was my experience with it. I think it's gonna be a fun episode. I hope I get to like open you guys up to watch more Fellini because I've been
Yes.
stuck on him. I've been like stuck on Fellini for the whole quarantine, I guess.
down.
So check it
open,
out.
you, sir.
Yokomoto's
Open.
going to be uploading a pretty cool poll. I'm curious as to what he's going to do for the poll for 8.5. But stay tuned on the
Ooh, and-
WatchTower podcast.
Can we also
Instagram.
plug in
Yeah.
that in the coming weeks, we are going to be having our season 3 opener
Yes.
for the Tower Cast. And yeah, please stay tuned. Some fun stuff's coming up. We're going to be trying some new things, but yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just stay tuned because we're going to have a lot more crowd interaction. I don't know when this episode drops. I think it drops after the fact. Next week. Okay, well, then you missed our Facebook Live conversation about the podcast, but at that point. But just stay tuned. There's going to be a lot of crowd interaction. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And just stay tuned for the next episode, man. If you guys have films to suggest, anything like that, shoot us a message on Facebook, Instagram, In the Mind of Yoko. Make sure to follow that page and check out the polls he's going to be putting up. Hey, there he is. But thank you guys for tuning in, man. Thank you for allowing us to nerd out in the cinematic world. We love you guys. Stay tuned for the next episode. Thank you.
See you,
Take care,
fellas.
everybody.